Writing is probably only 10% or 20% of the entire process, man. And copy is really just the tip of that spear.
What would be some of the pillars or principles of media buying?
You really cannot be afraid of numbers. It's marketing art or it's marketing science. A good ad is an ad that gets you the clicks and gets you the purchases.
You started with media buying before you actually got into copywriting.
You really need to understand, why people drop off, where people drop off. The numbers actually tells us a story, right? Media buying is really not that complicated. There's this thing called the offer, but it's the best thing ever. The main purpose of copy is to sell. There's a lot more psychology to it. I feel like there's a lot of teasing, there's a lot of buyer psychology involved as well. A lot of art of persuasion, art of negotiation that comes into play when you write copy, you see.
Every single time that this industry removes an actual visible barrier, an invisible barrier gets put up.
I always say to people who want to get into this, right, I say you need to be a marketer first, then pick a skill. If you don't consider yourself a marketer, then I think you're going to have a very tough time being in this industry. You got to pick one emotion that you're going to sell to.
It's not a get rich quick, it's not a biz up, it's just a skill.
At 31 is when I actually got started in the whole marketing space. Sorry to say, but there's really no shortcuts, man.
We're talking people who are making 15, 20, 25K.
If you're going to look at numbers as a copywriter, the two things that you need to look at is
So today we're here with the one and only Mark Lim, the ad copywriter, media buyer, marketing and advertising expert, I would say, who's spent for his clients 7 figures in media buying. So it's really nice to have you here. And yeah, thanks for taking the time today.
Definitely, man. It's nice to be here, man.
You've jumped into lots of different industries over the last few years and done a lot of different stuff for not only different industries, but also different markets within those industries. What would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned about how copywriting and media buying fit together?
Ooh. I think a lot of people talk a lot about copywriting and media buying as two separate things, but I think it's really important to really understand both of them. For a very simple example, especially during this season of election when you get a lot of bans for no apparent reason. When we launch the ads, it gets a rejection. So if it's two person doing two separate roles, the media buyer will be like, oh no, what am I going to do right now? I don't know why we're being rejected. But then if you're both a copywriter and media buyer, you'll be able to pick it up quite quickly. And then you can just make changes on the go and then launch, make changes on the go and launch, right? So I think being able to work together, if it's two person, of course, it's super important. But yeah, if it's just one person doing both copy and media buying, I think that's a huge advantage as well.
I've worked with a lot of clients that the media buyer was working in silo or the copywriter was working in silo. A lot of the clients I've worked with, I didn't have a back and forth with the media buyer. And I really wanted to have that. And I don't think I initiated that as much as I should have because I didn't fully understand the value of it like I do today and the conversation we're having. But how do you actually bridge that? Because I don't feel like most copywriters do have open communication with their media buyer. It's the media buyer almost wants to do their own thing. And even getting the data from the media buyer seems to be almost impossible for some copywriters. It's hey, how did the ads perform? It's I'll get back to you. And then they don't get back to you,
Yeah, I think the best way, honestly, is to just get yourself added into the ad account. As a copywriter, you really just need to know your way around the ad account. There's just no two ways about it, right? And it's not even about AI is going to replace you or whatever it is. You just need to know because like you said, right? We are copywriters. We are not storybook writers. We are not content writers. We can't just write and then, oh, I'm done. My job is done. No, your job, writing is just I think one part. And I guess you've shared before as well. So writing is probably only 10% or 20% of the entire process, man. Because there's research, right? There's reading, there's listening to your clients, stuff and understanding what they're doing and understanding who you're selling to. And then there's also the second part of the process, right? After you've written what you've written, how does it perform?
Yeah.
Right? You need to know what's going on. So really the best way is just get them to add you into the ad account you can have a view only access. So then that way you don't have to worry about like messing anything up, like accidentally turning off an ad set or accidentally deleting an ad or whatever it is. So you can have a view only access, learn how to set up custom columns within ad account. It's really not that difficult, right? And understand what are different metrics that you need to look at. I think that's the best way to do it, honestly.
I like that. I think that there's definitely some media buyers out there that, I don't know if it's intentional or if it's like just like self-preservation. They like don't really want to have that as visible as you know you and I wanted, because like I had a conversation or I was at least I was in a team meeting with a media agency, and it happened such a long time ago. I feel comfortable sharing the story without anybody knowing who it was, but it was the conversation. The conversation was like, oh yeah, you know, like we've been getting less. You know, we've been dialing in the message to appeal to like a higher quality lead. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, what you're basically saying is that there's no qualified people. Yeah, cost is going up, but there's like no qualified people on the sales calls. And then like the next week, it's like, no, we're broadening our reach. It's like, okay, because you're not generating enough leads with the ads that you're spending. Like, why is there so many of these I don't know, vague sentences? It's like, why can't more people that run ads just be transparent with what they're actually doing?
I think it really depends, because I've been in multiple situations before. I've been in situations where I'm client facing, meaning like I have to report directly to the client, like why are we getting these numbers and what are we doing, what are we seeing, and this stuff and all. And then I've also been on the back end where I completely do not speak to the client at all. Sometimes the message is lost in between, right? Because it's not my business, right? So sometimes agency owners want to protect themselves, you know, for maybe certain oversights. I can tell you that happens a lot. It happens a lot. Because realistically, one media buyer should only handle about 5 to 6 accounts. Max. Right. That is if their ad spend are anywhere between like, I don't know, $10,000 to $20,000 a month. You can comfortably manage 5 to 6 accounts, I would say. If they're huge accounts, like anywhere between 6 figures, I wouldn't even do that many, honestly. Some media buyers may disagree and they go, but because like you just don't have enough time to look at the data, you see. So I've been into ad accounts where a lot of them just do a set and forget. I mean, without getting too technical, there's something within Ads Manager where you can just dump all your creatives in. It's called dynamic ads, or now it's called flex ads. And then you just sort of let Facebook does its thing. You will just pick and choose the different combinations and stuff like that. So I've seen a lot of accounts just doing that. It's not wrong. I do it as well. Very successful media buyers do it as well. But it's always part of a bigger strategy, and you still have to keep an eye on it. But what I've noticed going into a lot of different accounts is a lot of times people just do a set and forget, because one, they're probably managing too many accounts. So they just go like, yeah, just give me 10 images, you know, like 5 different pieces of copy with 3 different headlines. I'm just going to like put all in. Good luck.
Secrets.
Secrets, yeah. So then when cost per lead goes up, they go like, oh, okay, yeah, let's broaden it. So when they broaden it, they probably like, you know, start to break it down, or then that's when they actually go inside and look like, okay, what's working? Okay, so this combination is working. Okay, maybe let's double down on that combination or stuff like that, right? So yeah, that's like really the secrets or behind the scenes as to why you probably encounter, you know, this varying messages or feedback. Yeah.
I think that there's a benefit or opportunity for copywriters then, because if you're the one that actually makes the effort to try and get that visibility into the account, you might actually be able to bridge that sort of translation to the client. Because
for sure,
there's many clients that I've worked with and had the pleasure of working with who were originally marketers and copywriters, and they know ads. So it's like those clients, when they work with somebody, the data's very, very, it's like, they know exactly what they're talking about. The media buyers talk directly, like exact numbers. It's like very, very transparent and clear.
Yeah.
But then there's been accounts I've worked on where the business owner's more of like, he built a business in a different industry and he's experienced at his game. Like, let's just say like a real estate client, right? The real estate people, like they run a real estate business. They're always in their real estate business. And now they're running a course or a coaching product and they don't really know marketing. They're more fulfillment focused. Now it's like, well, how do they just want more sales and profitability. That's like kind of the conversation. So it's like, maybe it's also difficult because media buyers like, well, I don't want to bore you with details, but like, we're trying to solve this and that. And like, how do I get that convo across? But I think if you're the copywriter that knows both, you suddenly become a very valuable asset to the business owner, because you actually can like communicate or like ask questions. Because I remember I was a marketing director once, and I had an agency under me that was running media, buying ads, and I was able to ask some hard questions.
Yeah. No,
and
definitely.
it's like they were not so happy with some of those questions initially, but like, I think that they also wanted those questions. They were kind of waiting for the business owner to like push back on the strategy, because it's like, well, it's not working. So can you give me what direction you want to go? Should we reduce the ad spend? Should we focus on building better creatives? Should we fix the landing pages, or like whatever, Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really important, because a lot of times people think like you just need to write better ads. I can tell you from my experience, a lot of times it's probably not the ad. Like, I always use this analogy, right? It's like quite literally the tip of the spear. That is the ad. You know how long a spear is, right? Like, can you imagine like, those 300, that movie and the soldiers, and like, the spear is like, what, 5-6 feet long easily, or even more, I don't know. And copy is really just the tip of that spear. So yeah, you definitely need to know, not just media buying. You really need to know how funnel works, the economics of a funnel as well. So, and the reason for that is because like with the online space, things move very, very quickly. So if you don't know what you're looking at, and you can't think quickly, you're gonna be very unprofitable very, very quickly as well. So yeah.
I think a lot of copywriters look at media buying as this like black box. Somebody's doing some magic, and then poof, ads are running, and poof, it's profit. What would you say is like maybe the best way to dabble with media buying so that it doesn't feel like such a foreign thing that's like a completely different? Because I think copywriters, they do that. They like kind of push it here, like, no, it's not like media buyer magic. He does the magic, and then I write the copy, and stuff happens. It's like, well, yeah. What would you say is like the easiest way to break that and actually get familiar with what's going on in there?
I think number one is you really cannot be afraid of numbers. I know copywriting is like, you have to be creative and all this stuff, which is true, right? But then, it comes back down to the whole thing, like, it's marketing art or it's marketing science. If you ask me personally, I would say it's both a bit of science and a bit of art, right? Science meaning like you really need to know a bit of the numbers as well. So you really need to understand what these numbers means. You cannot shy away. You cannot just say like, oh, I'm just a copy guy. I'm just gonna write good ads. Hey, good ads is super subjective, man. I've seen like ads that are really not great. Like, there's no intrigue, there's nothing crazy, there's no crazy hook and all this insane stuff, but it converts like mad. So to me, that's a good ad, right? A good ad is an ad that gets you the clicks and gets you the purchases, right? Or books you the calls or whatever it is down the road.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the first thing is you cannot be afraid of numbers. You really need to embrace that. And number two, like, this is really just educational, right? There's a ton of YouTube videos out there. I think even if you know media buying in theory, I think that's good enough. Yeah.
What would be some of the like the big pillars or principles of media buying that copywriters should understand a little bit better?
I would say right now, I mean, I wouldn't say there's any really big pillars of media buying. If like, I would probably oversimplify it right now, but honestly, media buying is really not that complicated. Like Ads Manager, like I can teach you how to set up an ad in like maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes tops. Right? There's really not much that you can or need to do within the Ads Manager. Well, at least for me, I feel like where I've come in or where I've really like offered huge value to my clients as a media buyer, it's not so much about setting up the ads, because my clients know how to set up the ads as well. They know how to set up ads as well. But I think where I really offer value is in the sense that like actually looking at the numbers. What does the number tell us? Because the numbers actually tells us a story, right? It's a customer journey at the end of the day. Every funnel is a customer journey. So as a media buyer, you need to understand like, okay, ads are the frontliners, right? Imagine you have a physical store, right? Ads is the person who's standing outside your store trying to get people into the store, right? And then your landing page is actually your store, but your store would have like 100 different items to sell, and you're not going to push 100 different items, right? You're just going to push your best sellers up front, right? Why don't you try this drink, right? It's our new drink. So that's where your landing page, your lead magnet, and everything comes in. So as a media buyer, you need to understand the entire customer journey, understand where we're not doing as well, and then you need to really think like, okay, marketing principles. Why are we not doing well? What can we do better? Right. Other than that, of course, there are some knowledge in terms of how to set up ads within the ad manager and like, how to structure campaigns, of course, all these things you need to understand as well. So, but if you talk about like the great pillars of media buying, I would say there really isn't like these great pillars. You just really need to understand customer journey. You really need to understand, why people drop off, where people drop off, and then what can you actually do to help improve the conversion rates of these at these different points. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I think it's a lot less intimidating than people think it is. From just our conversation right now, it's like it's just numbers. And I mean, as a copywriter, you're kind of responsible for numbers anyway, right? I mean, what else? Copywriting is just, it's the writing and then looking at the numbers. Whereas maybe media buying is a little bit less writing and a little bit more looking at numbers. So it's like you're almost already somewhat doing media buying by looking at the conversion rates of your copy.
For sure, yeah. The only difference is you don't set up the ads, right? You don't jump behind the scenes, and you don't learn the technicalities of how the platform works and stuff like that. I mean, of course, there are skills to that, right? Like especially with Google ads or YouTube ads, when you set up the back end, like you need to know where to go and what to press, and what to push, what buttons to push, right? So in that sense, yeah, of course, there are things that you need to do as well. So, but I would say like, after speaking to like the really good media buyers, like they really talk a lot more about funnel economics, like really understanding like what does this happen, when you do this, what's going to happen, how do you scale profitably and stuff like that. So it's like a lot higher level stuff rather than like on the platform kind of stuff.
That's interesting. I mean, for me, it's like I when you think of software needs to get customers, let's say for like ActiveCampaign to send emails, ActiveCampaign needs to get user adoption. So they're like actively working every single day to make their platform as user-friendly as possible. Otherwise, they're not going to get customers. Like if you have a very complicated software product that no one knows how to use or can use, you don't get customers, even if it's a good product. So the argument for like, oh, the tech is complicated, oh, the software is complicated. It's like, no, the software is designed to make your life easier. And they're producing hundreds of training materials to make user adoption easier, like ActiveCampaign and some smaller softwares maybe. But then like you got Google and Facebook. I mean, there's more information than you'll ever need to buy a course for,
That's true.
I think you could just watch on YouTube all of this stuff because Facebook's got billions of dollars being spent, right? So like, of course they're going to have adoption dialed in. Like it's going to be really, really good. Everything that you need to know to be able to run ads is available, right? So interesting. So, okay. So then, you started with media buying before you actually got into copywriting, right? So like, what was the motivation to start dabbling in maybe more of the art side of marketing?
Well, because I had to write ads, I was doing media buying and writing ads at the same time, right? Because when I started off, I actually learned how to do media buying from somebody here in Malaysia. Great guy as well, also like genuinely just really wanting to help people, right? So he gave me a head start, so I was doing media buying, but I had to write ads as well. And when I started off, I also initially thought that like, I have to write a lot of ads because like when, like let's say when the ROAS drops or when I'm not getting enough purchases or when cost per purchase is going up, I have to just like write ads. And I remember my first client, I wrote like close to 20 ads. Like not some are not brand new, like just maybe iterations, like changing up the hooks and stuff like that. Like, but I didn't know then, right? So like every other day I was just like writing a bunch of ads, and then after like a whole month I sat down there and I go like, this doesn't make sense. Like I cannot be writing so many ads a month just for one client, right? Like how am I going to do this for like 3 clients or 4 clients or 5 clients? It just doesn't make sense. So then that's when I started to like, really, so that I started buying more books. I started, investing in different courses, and I started to realize like, okay, there's this thing called the offer, right? And an offer doesn't necessarily mean a discount, because over here in Malaysia, when you mention offer, people just think like, oh, does it mean I have to give like a discount? No, it's not, right? So then I started learning about offer creation. I started learning about funnels, and then, like a deeper sense of funnels and like what it is and how it works. And I go like, okay, cool. So I'm not supposed to write as many ads per month, right? Then I started to dial it in, my processes and everything, but it was still taking me too long to write ads. I was literally like, because that's what I thought, right? I thought writing was like, you sit in front there, you stare at the blank screen, and then you just go like, give me inspiration, like, that's what I thought writing was, right? I didn't even know there was a thing called copywriting. Like, I didn't know what's the difference between copywriting and content writing. Like, I didn't know any of this. I just knew like I had to write ads, and I've seen ads, right? So I thought like, okay, how hard can it be? I'm like, I used to take like maybe 2 hours to write one ad. So I go like, no, I need to invest into a course to learn how to write copy, because if not, I'm not going to be able to do this as a business. And then so that's how I got started into copywriting. And then I started to learn. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what copywriting is. Okay, this is what the principles are. And I started reading, the old school stuff and everything. And I go like, okay, this is actually really interesting, right? And then that's how I actually went down the rabbit hole of copywriting.
It's cool. That's very cool. So you were just writing ads without any context on.
Nope.
Just writing ads.
Like, all I was told that the ads had to sell the click. That's it. Don't sell the product. The ads had to sell the click. I knew the very basic copywriting framework, like problem, agitate, solution. Just like super basic stuff. And that's it. That's all I knew. Like, make sure there's a call to action, sell the click, put the link in there, and that's it.
Nice. That's funny. So, okay, so I'm curious then. You mentioned that copy versus content writing. I've got a couple of perspectives on this. I think majority of copywriters today are actually just content writers that know how to write short form. Like in the past, it was blogs and long form, and now they just write short form. And they're actually content writers. They don't write they don't write direct response copy. What would you say is like the biggest difference between copywriters and content writers?
So a quick fun fact, I actually wrote content, like blog articles and stuff like that, I think about 15 plus years ago. This was like in the early days of the internet. But this was way back, right? But I think the biggest difference between copy and content is that content is a lot more information driven, because then you write like blog articles or SEO articles and stuff like that, and it's just supposed to be really information heavy, right? Not necessarily selling you anything, but just very information heavy. Whereas compared to copy, it's just like the main purpose of copy is to sell, right? Copywriting is to sell. You need to sell. That is basically, that famous word like salesmanship in print. So right. There's a lot more psychology to it. I feel like there's a lot of teasing. There's a lot of like buyer psychology involved as well. A lot of art of persuasion, art of negotiation that comes into play when you write copy, you see. Because you obviously can't just say like, best microphone ever, buy now.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't just like give a whole bunch of information like this microphone is like how many in, like what size, what dimension, like what, all these stuff and all, like nobody's going to care. Right? So right. I think that's the biggest difference between copy and content. Yeah. So you really need to know how to sell. That's why I feel like sales people or people in sales would make pretty good copywriters as well, I would feel.
Yeah, we did an interview with a copywriter I think he's making like 16 grand a month now. And he was in sales before. So it was a nice transition for him. And it's interesting because when you say it's like about selling, this is how I see even more so that most copywriters today are not even copywriters. They're actually just content writers. Is when you look at the email copy, you know how you look at the email copy, and I see this even with like experienced writers as well, experienced people that write a lot of email copy and social media copy. You see the email, it flows, it's okay, it's interesting, content, information, some story. When you get to the close, the close is like, just like click here to join now. That's it. It's like this very, it's just this very, very quick little, it's like all this information, blah, 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 story, oh, click here.
It's and like, by the way, by the way, there's a link
by the
here.
way, buy this, yeah. It's like, oh, that's an interesting way to close. Or like, it's in the PS. It's like, PS, by the way, if you want help, click here. And that's like, this is a very, like avoid, like people, they kind of like avoid the sale.
I've definitely seen those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up because like I think a lot of people are afraid to sell.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think a lot of people are afraid to sell. And of course there's nothing wrong with like, writing a story-based email because I think that's what you teach as well, right? And it's effective, right? But there's a point to it or there's a purpose to it. Like we're not just sharing stories for the sake of sharing story because like, or whatever, because this is very emotional. Yeah, great, cool. But you gotta pick one emotion that you're gonna sell to, right? Whether it's frustration, whether it's fear, whether it's, anger, or happiness or whatever it is, right? And the whole point of like, I think like what you teach very well as well, so is that how you use that story to eventually get to the close, you see. And it's not just like story time, by the way, link here.
By the way, yeah, I'm with you, man. I think it's a big opportunity. Closing an email copy is a great first step into becoming a better like cold traffic copywriter because I would say ads are like, well, it depends what type of ad you're writing, sure. But I'd say that definitely many direct ads, very, very direct ads. It's like 80% of that ad is just direct response persuasion copy. It's like, hey, you have this problem, build on it. Here's the reason you should like try this because it's better than all the other things that you've tried that didn't work. Click here. Like it's, yeah. So it's an opportunity to start practicing that. I think that's the first place I actually started to get, really good at writing ads is by just writing better emails. And those emails had a really good close. And then I was able to take some of those emails and like cut down the lead, cut down the top, and then like it became an ad. It actually would work sometimes pretty well.
Yes.
So
yes,
it's a good place to start for sure. I'm curious though, like in your experience with ad campaigns, how much can a copywriter, I know this is going to be one of those it depends questions, but I know copywriters want to know anyway. They're like, how much can my copy really do for the ad account? Like if I write because there's a lot of business owners that actually just blame the copy. Maybe less experienced business owners, but there's a lot of copywriters I've worked with that come to me and they're like all stressed. They're like, oh, I know, like I wrote these ads. I hope that they convert. And I'm like, mate, you're not saving this business with like ad copy. You're not like turning an entire business around with like a better hook. Like, let's just be realistic here.
That's true. Yeah. I think that's a huge misconception, or maybe that was oversold, right?
Yeah.
But that's a very good question because and my unpopular opinion, I mean, because I guess I could say because I'm a copywriter as well, right? Is that like just recently for a client, I mean, I won't reveal too much about who and what industry, but I think I wrote a total of 20 ads. Right. Of 20 ads, I think about 3 to 4 were like top performers. Like actually getting positive ROAS and stuff like that. And of the 3 to 4, one of it became the control. So that's one of 20 ads that I wrote that actually became the control. And it's been a control for about 3 months now. Right. But I can't say, I can't take all the credit as well. Because from my experience as a media buyer, when we change up the image or the video, that seems to move the needle a lot more than it does the copy.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that like, it's like the whole thing, right? Is your heart more important or is your brain more important? You can't really say which is more important, right? They're both equally important, of course. But the copy comes in when you look at the numbers, like when you look at the click-through rates. So if I have to just go to like a bit more technical terms, right? If you're going to look at numbers as a copywriter, the two things that you need to look at is link click-through rate and CTR all. These are the two columns. Of course, lead, cost per lead, or if you're doing e-com, purchases, cost per purchases, and all these other stuff. Yeah, of course, those are important as well. But at the end of the day, you want to sell the click. So if your link click-through rate is not great, and your CTR all is not great, then yes, it's a copy problem. Then you're probably not like...
What's that second data point you said?
It's called CTR all, ALL. Yeah. CTR all. So the rule of thumb is always like link click-through rate should be at least be 1% and above. Right? And then the CTR all should at least be 2 times or 3 times more than the link click-through rate. So if you have a 1% link click-through rate, you should have at least a 2.5 or 3% CTR all. Yeah, so that's
them clicking like the image or clicking anything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
So CTRL's definition is like they actually click on see more, or whether they click on play the video to watch the video, or and to read your copy and stuff like that. So from that perspective, it's important. Because I know like some people also like to really like say like, oh, you need like some crazy massive hook or like some clickbait stuff and all these insane things. You do to some extent, but what I've seen as well, so if it's too sensationalized, you get super high click-through rates. You get super high stuff, but you get no purchases at all.
Right, because it's like you get all those leads and then they go down the funnel and they don't buy. And so then you actually end up wasting money because you've now attracted all these people.
To some extent, yeah. Because you create such a sensationalized like, wow, breaking news, CIA found a new way, or like doctor in Wisconsin found a CIA secret files on how to make money with this brainwave and stuff like that, right? And like, who doesn't want to read? Like, everybody wants to read that, right? Like, everybody's going to want to read, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're speaking to the right group of people or your target audience. You see, so I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying like, yes, you can do it, but you need to be able to look at these numbers quick. So when you're able to look at these numbers quickly, then you go like, oh, okay, cool. Okay, maybe it's too sensitive. So like sometimes like some conversations that I have with my clients or even with a media buyer, we go like, oh, do you think that's a bit too sensational? Yeah, we think like the lead is probably too sensationalized or it's too clickbaity. Like, it's great, there's click-through rates are great, cost per clicks are low, but no one's making a purchase. Okay, cool. So then there's clearly a disconnect. Now, from that perspective, then yes, copy is important. So you can't just like rely on an image and then like write shit copy as well. So.
So then I guess we could say that the copy is not going to be a 3, 4, 5x lift that some of these people are expecting to happen. It's like, oh yeah, this ad is not profitable, like this funnel is not profitable. It's like, oh, let me just fix the hook in the ad and it's going to just change everything. It's like, it's not actually how it works.
If it's not profitable, the first thing I'll look at is the offer.
Yeah.
It's almost always very likely the offer, because like right now I've been doing a lot more of these AC funnels, right? And you can very quickly tell whether an offer is actually gonna work or not work. I can't divulge too much information on this, but yeah, you can really quickly tell. So like, if you're putting out a new offer and if it's untested, right, then you need to be able to spend the least amount of money to see and to just see whether there's enough traction and whether people actually want what it is that you're offering. Yeah, before you even go into looking at copy or like crazy hooks or whatever, other stuff and things like that. You see.
So as a copywriter, then like, it's not a very like what's actually expected of good copywriters that make 6 figures is not really the right word for them even, I would say. It's more like you're more of a marketer than anything. Like copywriting is one of the skills, but you should actually see yourself as a marketer that's like willing to look at data, willing to write like creative work, but also, use data backed angles to
sure.
And then also be able to look at the offer and say pretty quickly, this is going to work, this is not going to work. I was looking at a piece of copy yesterday, actually, in the Dojo from one of the copywriters, and he's writing this text sales letter, and he's saying the right stuff. But in my experience with that particular industry, with that particular market, I'm reading through and I'm like, it doesn't matter like what you write in that ad. You could say as many amazing things and exciting things as possible and say all the stuff that they care
100%.
about. But I just look at that page, I'm like, it's lacking. It's not there,
I always say to people who want to get into this, right? I say like you need to be a marketer first, then pick a skill. A lot of times people think like like copywriting is like the do all, or media buying is the do all, or whatever it is. But media buying, copywriting, content writing, CRO, all these other things, these are all just hard skills. These are hard skills for you to visualize or create something, like, because marketing is so abstract, right? Like we can sit here and talk about all these different marketing ideas and stuff like that, but like how do you actually, like formulate this or actually bring this to life? It's through copy, it's through image, it's through videos, it's through funnels and stuff like that, right? But you always need to be a marketer first. If you don't consider yourself a marketer, then I think you're gonna have a very tough time being in this industry.
I think that also gives you more opportunity anyway, because now if you're a marketer, it's like you're using AI to help you as a marketer.
Oh yes.
Instead of being like, I'm a copywriter, like I'm dependent on my Google Doc for like my livelihood. It's like, I think you're depending on the wrong thing here. It's about selling the offer. That's the skills. Like, can you sell and can you create customers from strangers for business is fundamentally.
Can you market the offer, I would say then. It's like what you said, right? Like you can look at it and go like, and can be the best copy in the world as well. You can get the best copywriter to write a copy and for a fact it's probably not going to do well, because like, I mean, it's all back to like Eugene Schwartz, right? He said like you cannot create demand, right? You just need to look for a problem, right? And if the offer does not actually solve a problem, or if the offer is actually solving a good to have, then it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it's not about. This is the thing I think a lot of copywriters don't realize. I've seen this as well, like exactly, and that's actually a good point, because I didn't actually think of it that way with that quote, like that particular thing that was said. I've noticed a lot of copywriters try and sell or like convince people of a perspective in their copy. And this is not really about ads. I think this is like maybe but just more about like general persuasion skills. And I often ask copywriters that write like this, like, why are you trying to convince people? Like your copy sounds like you're coming from a place where you're trying to convince someone that doesn't agree with you to agree with you. We're not selling to people like that. They don't want it. It's like, why would you try and approach somebody that doesn't want to make money online and be like, oh, no, wait. Like,
but it's the best thing ever.
This is a great thing. Like, I know you're skeptical. It's like, no. People that buy our stuff, they want to buy. They're maybe on the fence or something, but like they're looking in the direction. They like, let's just take BizOp for like young people. Like, let's just use Tate's audience, right? Those young men that Tate is selling to, they want that. They're basically just getting permission from Tate to like act on what they want to do, And
yes,
it's like
100%.
When you write from that place, it's no longer like, here, let me convince you of this thing you don't agree with. It's like, hey, I know you've got a lot of voices in your head, so you're kind of doubting whether or not you should do this thing, but I know you want to do it. You can. Here's how.
Yeah.
It's that's sort of like the message I would say is persuasion.
I think because it comes from the whole, copywriting is about handling objections. We have to handle objections, which is not wrong. I mean, of course you have to handle objections, but I think it goes back to what I said earlier as well. So right, it's that emotion, right? Like Andrew Tate. Like I have nothing. Like I have no opinion on him. Like I don't want to jump into that and talk into that as well. So right, but if you try to sell me anything from Andrew Tate, I probably wouldn't buy. even if you give it to me for free, I still probably wouldn't, like say yes to it, because like it's just not for me. I have nothing against him. I mean, like, I have nothing against what he's selling or whatever it is. I mean, like, I have my personal opinions about it, but from a marketing or product perspective, I just don't need it.
No, you do though. let me sell you on why you actually do need this. Let me prove it to you. Let me handle that objection. You say you don't need this. Well,
so
are you sure?
So you need to pick. That's why I say, like, you need to understand who you're selling to, and you need to pick an emotion that's bugging them, right? Frustration is always the best emotion, right? People are frustrated for whatever reason. Like you said, the young men, they're frustrated because maybe they have been suppressed, or they're not allowed to express themselves, or they've been called toxic masculinity. And then there's this guy who comes in and say, like, no, you guys are the savior of the world, and then everyone just go like, yeah, So you see that taps into not anger but frustration. They're just frustrated that they don't have a space, right? And what he's selling to them is a community, right? It's a space.
It's a space to do that, yeah.
Yeah, come and be masculine, or be whatever it is that you want to be. So yeah, you can't. If you sell to everybody, you're gonna sell to nobody at the end of the day.
I think this makes things easier and harder at the same time. And I think we've talked about this before, where it's like every single time that this industry removes an actual visible barrier, an invisible barrier gets put up. For example, when copywriting was a direct response physical thing where you actually sent mail, there is an actual physical barrier or visible barrier. And it was only mainly in America. Then it went online. The visible barrier of like, you have to be able to write cold copy like to people in person, that disappeared. But now the new barrier was like, well, now 10 times more people have access to this skill. So now you're competing against 10 times more people. Same thing when like it went mainstream. Like copywriting is very mainstream at the time of our interview, right? Like when I got started, nobody even knew what it was. I'm like, I'm a copywriter. It's like, oh, you're a lawyer. You write copy, like copyright, for like
I get it,
copyright. I was in Asia recently, and I just mentioned casually to somebody that's not even in our industry, so like at a coffee shop. I don't remember where it was, or maybe like a Grab, like an Uber, and I'm like, yeah, I do copy. They're like, oh yeah, my nephew is a copywriter. And it's like, this is the conversation today. It's like in Cape Town, everybody knows what a copywriter is. Like I'm at the Starbucks, it's like, oh yeah, like I'm sitting on my laptop, I'm a copywriter. I see somebody else sitting at a coffee shop. I'm like, they're busy writing on their laptop on a Google Doc. I'm like, oh, they're a copywriter. Like copywriting is suddenly, in the last 3 years, everybody sort of starts to know what it is. And it's like, cool, all these barriers have been removed. You no longer have to write long form direct response copy. You can kind of be a content writer and like hide behind emails and organic copy. But now what's the barrier is there's like 500 to 1 copywriters that will do email marketing versus writing ads. And then the next thing is like, now there's all these gurus that teach how to write copy. And now you have all these formulas for free. It's available. Another barrier that's been removed, invisible barrier, has been introduced, where it's like every single person is using the same outreach template to get business owners. So now business owners are no longer looking at their email list. So it's like every single time you think it gets easier, that's the same thing with AI, right? It's like AI is like, oh, now like change the landscape. It's like, okay, now most copywriters suck because they need AI to help them to write even the smallest thing. Whereas there's so few copywriters that have like the fundamental skill. Are they kind of, I actually forgot my original question, but like, I think it's like the barriers that have been introduced is like, there's new problems that we have to deal with in the industry.
But I think like just to add on to what you said, over here in Malaysia, people still don't know what a copywriter is. Like I had legitimate copywriters like comment on a post in a very big group here in Malaysia, like a very big Facebook group, right? And they say like, I'm a copywriter, and this guy has like proper experience. Like he's written for like an 8-figure a DTC brand, and his copy is like really good. Like in the international market, he's well known. But when he came and like tried to educate people on copywriting here in Malaysia, people look at him like, no, what the hell? You don't know anything. Like like no, every like copy is copy, man. Like what do you mean copywriting? Like then like there's a bunch of us here in Malaysia who who work with overseas clients, right? And we all just like, yeah, it's probably going to take us another 5 to 10 years to catch up to the Western world or the international market. So, we're just going to continue to hide in our caves and, leave them be. And I don't even tell people I write copy, man. Like when I tell people I write, when I tell people that I write copy here in Malaysia, they think that I'm not good at studies. that I that I can't get another job, but the reality is that I actually have a master's in chemical engineering. I graduated from one of the top universities. I was in corporate. I used to work for like a what do you call that, top Inc. 500 company, and stuff like that. But when you tell people like you're a copywriter, they'll be like, oh, you're one of those hippies, is it? Like, like
nomad.
Yeah, so I'm like, I just like, I mean, like, I couldn't be bothered to like really explain, to be honest. But so over here is still that. But then and the other thing about what you mentioned about how like people are talking about copywriting as a biz op, I think like I know Stefan recently got quite a bit of heat when he said like, copywriting is not biz op. And my unpopular opinion as well, so like it probably is not. It's a skill.
Yeah,
it's definitely a skill, right? You should learn a skill, to play guitar or to play a piano, right? And copy is a skill. When you've learned that skill, what you do with it, that's when it becomes a biz op or not.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I totally. That's exactly how I think people need to see it.
Yes.
Because it is.
Yes.
It's like, this is a skill. You can use it for sitting on the internet and posting on Facebook about how you're broke, or you can use it to like attract business owners, or you could use it to sell, or you could even use it in sales, or you could even use it in interviews, like with the job. Like
exactly.
Even if you have a job, you could use this to like boost your CV, for example. I want to circle back on what you said about like Asia being like a place where a lot of people aren't even really familiar with, or at least in Malaysia for sure. I think this is really interesting because like I was saying that there's these barriers that are real barriers, and there's like more opportunity when there's those barriers, and like the opportunity changes when the barriers become invisible, and the people that are like aware of what the barrier is, they're able to profit. There's a lot of people actually in I don't know like where exactly I would say, but I mean I've received messages, which messages I'm talking about, from people saying like, oh, like Asian copywriters aren't really making money. And I'm like, this is this perspective that they're like, oh, unless you live in America, you're not making money. I've never lived in America. I've been to America twice as of this recording. I've spent 3 days in the US, and the majority of my entire income's in US dollars. So, I mean, I'm in South Africa right now. But like from your perspective, is that true? Is Asian copywriters like broke?
I would say what I think Alex Hormozi said it the best. If you say it's true, then it's true to you. You say like, if, that's what Hormozi said, right? Like if you say you can't do it, then you're right, you can't do it. Right? If you say that Asian copywriters are broke, then you are right. Of course there are broke Asian copywriters, and there are copywriters who don't make it as well, who are from Asia and who really just cannot turn this into a biz op. But I personally know a couple of very Asian copywriters who are doing very well for themselves. It's just that maybe it's a bit of an Asian culture. We just, we don't flash our, we're not very flashy as a culture. Because like I think culturally as Asians, it's like we've always just been taught to like just not boast or brag, which is a double-edged sword, because then a lot of us don't really know how to sell ourselves as well.
Right.
Yeah. So no, it's definitely not true. And when I say I personally know, it's not that I know 2 or 3, right? Like probably like 2 handful of Asian copywriters. Like I personally know. No, those who I don't even personally know, there's a lot more as well. So right. So it's definitely not true, man.
Yeah, I mean I know plenty that are making, and we're not talking numbers. We haven't talked numbers yet, but I'm going to give you guys some numbers if you're watching this. It's like we're talking people who are making 15, 20, 25K. There's a lot. And English is not their first language. And I have interviewed one of them already on this channel. And, like Mark and I were also talking, and Mark, you're not doing too badly yourself.
I'm doing
you're doing
all right.
you're quite humble about it, but like we both know that you're also making some good bucks over there. So, copywriters that are saying like, oh, it's not possible to make that much money. It's like, I'm not a big fan of using the words limiting belief because I feel like it's thrown around as this sort of like a way to dismiss any like real problem people have. Like, oh yeah, you have a real problem. It's actually not. It's just a limiting belief. But in this case, I actually think it is one of those things where it's like, I mean, Henry Ford, I think originally said that as well. I think it's Henry Ford. Like Alex says it. I think or Dale Carnegie or something. But there's like Andrew, some name. I'm not good with these quotes, but they said like whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And it's like 100%. There's an opportunity to make a lot of money. I think the biggest challenge maybe Asian copywriters have is like time zone, maybe accent as well. Because like even if you speak English as a native language in Asia, there's a lot of places that have an accent in English that like, if you're not aware of it, Americans notice it, and they don't like. When I first met people from Singapore, I didn't realize it's their first language.
English is my first language as well.
Yeah, like I didn't know this about Asia because like I grew up in Africa. In Africa, we don't really know anything about Asia.
I completely understand, man.
I grew up in South Africa, so like for a lot of South Africans, they just think Asia's like China. Not even joking. They just think it's China, and so it's like now I start meeting people from Singapore, and I'm like, oh, so what's like your first language? And then they're like English. And I was like, I feel so bad now because I knew nothing. But like now I love going to Asia and stuff, and I just realized I think that maybe Asian copywriters might not realize that Americans also don't have this context sometimes about them, and they don't understand that the time zones like. I mean, maybe I'd love for you to tell me, like, what are some of the biggest challenges that Asian copywriters deal with that they have to resolve in order to make it work in this industry?
I think, like you said, I also don't really like to throw around the word limiting beliefs, but really in this case, it's quite a bit of that. For myself, I've been quite blessed because, like, I actually went to the UK. I actually studied a year in England, Nottingham to be precise. So I actually lived and studied there. Then I studied in the campus here as well. So I was, and even from a young age, my dad has exposed us to like the world outside of Malaysia. So for me, I've always had the belief like, I don't have that inferior. I don't know whether the word is inferiority complex or I don't feel inferior to people outside of Malaysia. I think a lot of Asians feel that way. Like they always feel like, these people know so much more than us, or like let's just say the Americans, right, whatever. Like, they just know so much more than us, or and stuff like that. And they probably feel like, who am I? I'm just a nobody from, like maybe literally like a small town boy, and stuff like that. So I really feel like in this case it's really just limiting beliefs, right? Because at the end of the day, like if you really want to do it, you study, you like invest. Oh, that's the other thing as well. They're so afraid to invest into like masterminds beyond Malaysia. Like, I'm just going to use Malaysia as an example, right? Just take the Dojo. How many of us are from Southeast Asia? I'm probably the only Malaysian left in the group, and then there's maybe one Singaporean, two guys from Hong Kong. I think like maybe there's just like 4 or 5 hours over here, And I think that's really the first problem because a lot of people ask me like, hey, how do you even get into like these circles? How do you even get like international clients? And I said, because I invest international money.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Like then they go like, oh, but isn't it expensive? I'm like, expensive compared to what? Because when you say expensive, like it has to be compared to what, right? Like, so they go like, oh, I don't know because it's a US dollar. You see, that's the other thing. Because like the US dollar is so much more stronger than it is here in Malaysia, right? So you see then that's that mental block again. Oh, but it's in US dollar. Yeah, okay. And
right. Yeah.
So it's a lot of all these stuff as well also, right? And I think it's really just that. Because like the difference with the guys who I see who are based here in Malaysia who are absolutely killing it, they really like don't give a shit. They go like, oh, there's opportunity to make money in America while I can sit here in Malaysia. Okay, cool. Who do I need to speak to? Oh, this person? Okay, cool. I'm going to reach out to this. Oh, I need to buy a course? Oh, crap. I only have like maybe like $100. I need another $400. Okay, I'm going to ask my mom for a loan. Like, I know this guy, he
Solved.
literally asked, yeah, and he actually asked his mom for a loan at 16. He's much younger than me. At 16, he asked his mom for a loan. Bought a copywriting course, never looked back. Guy's doing amazing right now, man. He lives in a very nice place here in Malaysia.
Amazing. I like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to South Africa, because South Africa, the US dollar kills us here, and it's like for you to, let's say in America, $5,000 is $5,000. But in South Africa, $5,000, I would say, like, psychologically for an American, if you're an American watching this, it feels like maybe like $20,000 psychologically. It feels like five figures, or maybe not that much, maybe like 15K. But 5K is like 4 figures. 15K feels like a lot. Okay, it's 5 figures now. Now we're talking like savings, life savings, or like money, So for South Africans, that would be like, oh, this is like life savings I'm investing. This is like money I would put only in an asset. That's the psychology. And my suggestion to a lot of people that are not living in America is like, okay, I get it. You got to start counting your money in dollars, not in your local currency. I do not count or invoice clients with a local currency in mind. I don't know how much money I have in the local currency. I know how much money I have in dollars. I know how much my net worth is in dollars, US dollars. In fact, even when I was in Canada, because I lived in Canada for a while, like, I was counting in Canadian dollars. And Canadian dollars is like 1.3 to the US dollar, 1.35. And so when I made my first 6 figures, or my first 10K, it was Canadian. And I thought, no. Like, this is just creating a psychology that I'm already at 10K. I started counting in US dollars that same month. And I felt broke again. I was like, I'm only at 7.8K. I'm not at 10K or something.
That's true.
And then I hit 10K. Right? I hit 10K with US dollars, and then I hit 20K with US dollars, and I 25K. And it was this crazy thing, because back in then I was like only thinking in Canadian. I remember when I hit 25K with US dollars, I actually pulled up a calculator and I calculated it. And I was like, damn. In Canadian dollars, I'm like seriously doing well. Like, I felt uncomfortable with how well I was doing in the Canadian currency. And then like later as well, like later when I had like my first 50K month, it was like converted into Canadian, it was like 67 and I just felt or more even. So that would be my suggestion for everybody. That's like, you need to start counting. If you want to operate in the US market or the digital online market, you need to think in the US digital market. That's what the Americans want, is they just want somebody that gets their world. Maybe that's another thing, Mark. Maybe it's not just inferiority. It's also like they feel like they're not American, or they're an outsider to this world. It's like, okay, well then stop being an outsider. Stop thinking in your local, like live like a local.
Correct.
But operate internationally.
Yeah, because the interesting thing here, like, at least here in Malaysia, culturally, especially the English-speaking population here, like if English is your first language here in Malaysia, chances are like 80% or 90% of whatever you consume is from America. Like, if you walk on the street and you speak to any Malaysian who like has English as his first language, or even Singaporeans who has English as their first language, right? They've probably seen all the American dramas, like, on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever that you have, right now. And they've watched every blockbuster, American blockbuster movie out there. Like, so they do know, like, all these references and stuff like that, like, but of course, if you want to jump into like the biz op stuff and all, then you need to know like the other nuances of like, like 401k, Roth IRAs and all this stuff, but that's, stuff that you can learn, right? So like, I always tell people, like, you're already like so westernized with the kind of entertainment that you consume. Why do you stop there? Why do you stop there? But again, like, if it's something that you want to do, if it's not, then you should just move on. Like, don't keep on harping on the fact like, oh, I still want to do it. Like, if you want to do it, then do it. If not, just say no and move on and find something else. If it's not for you, it's not for you. It's fine. Just move on and find something else, right?
It really is actually that simple. It's like, and this is, I think, what I really admire this about the Philippines, because when I was there, there's a lot of people there that are like really working their way to be part of the international market. Like, there are so many more people in the Philippines now that are like working to be whether it's copywriters or in sales or anything in the online space. It's like
100%, man.
they're dominating. Like if you're in America, you now know the Philippines. You know what I mean? Like they know, they got every team has got a couple people from the Philippines, and they're hard workers.
And that's why I tell the Malaysians as well. So right, I feel like, and the other thing I feel also is pride. A lot of them are not willing to humble themselves to whether learn a new skill or, like for example, Matt, you're much younger than I am, right? You're much younger than I am. But for me, it's like I enjoy learning. I really don't care like how young or old you are. Like if you know something better than me, I'm willing to like, okay, cool, let me learn from you, right? But when I tell people like, I only started in this like when I was like, I'm 35 this year. I got started in this when I was 31. And that's all for internet marketing, the internet marketing world. Like at 31 is when I actually got started in the whole marketing space. I was never involved in the marketing space prior to that. And when I tell people like, when they ask me like, oh, you've always been, I say, no, I literally just started 4 years ago. And like, then how do you like grow so fast? I say like, I learn, I buy books, I buy courses, I speak to people, I put money into myself, right? And I say like, do you want to do the same? Like, no, I'm a bit too old. Like, it's not really for me. I'm not good at writing. Well then, then there you have it, right? That's your answer, right? And I feel like, because I've met a lot of Filipinos as well, when I was in the Philippines, right? I really respect them because I feel like a lot of them are willing to humble themselves or like to actually pick this up or do something about it to get themselves out of those circumstances, right? In Malaysia, it's still quite comfortable. Like if you get a decent 9 to 5, if you work in like, a multinational or big corporate, you can live a fairly comfortable life. But I would say that the cost of living here is starting to go up. It's really starting to go up. A lot of people are starting to see the need for a side hustle or some additional income and stuff like that. So maybe in another 3 to 5 years, we'll probably reach that stage as well. But by then, the Filipinos would have taken over the world really easy.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, is like it doesn't reactiveness is not the way to go with this kind of thing. Like a lot of people, like this is why I think a lot of people are suffering now with the biz op copywriting thing. Is like a lot of people are getting into this industry as copywriters out of like a need, they're not aspirationally entering the space the way that they were in the past. It's almost like I don't actually know how to really say that, but I've just noticed like with the trend of copywriters, the copywriters that got in 5-6 years ago, there was or maybe even like when you joined 4 years ago, it's like there was a lot more. It wasn't as biz opt. It wasn't as you can do this without anything else kind of attitude. And so the caliber of people that entered the space, I think that just the attitude and the approach was a little different, and that's why like a lot of us have set ourselves up pretty well, where we have a lot of really great connections and we're always called on to do great work for great businesses, where a lot of the people today, they're like struggling. They're like, why don't I have clients? Why don't I have, and it's still very like possible today, right? I mean, as you've seen in the dojo, there's a lot of young guys that like just joined a year or two ago and they're already making 10K a month. It's not like that. It's like you said, it's exactly like you said. It's like being able to humble themselves and come into this from a place of like, where do I stand to gain? Not, I need to make 20K this year, or like I'm a failure because Tate says so, or whoever else is, or whatever other preconceived expectation that they have coming into the space. Like this is a skill. This is just like any other skill. It's a skill. It's not a get rich quick. It's not a biz up. It's just a skill. Like if you want to use it to make a business, then you can get rich maybe. But like it's just a skill. It's just a skill.
Yes. You just, and I think like the guys that you mentioned, the young guys in the dojo, like mad respects to them as well, because like they know it's a skill and they know that, you need to hone your skills to get good and to actually, if you want to make money out of it, right? And it's not like, like, let me teach you how to make $2,000 in the next 60 days, and stuff like that. I mean, like, does that happen? Yes, of course it happens. Like, it happens for some of us as well, but it took time, some like years. For me, it took years. It took years for me to like finally land like a proper like full on copy kind of client, and you really just need to put in the work, man. There's really, sorry to say, but there's really no shortcuts, man. There's really just no shortcut. There really is no shortcut. So like, if that's not for you, it's perfectly fine. Just go and find something else. Like there's something else for you out there, really.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude to have, and that is an advantage that we have in countries that don't just have handouts. I think like a lot of first world countries, that like it's a little bit more of that sort of attitude that you can easily fall into that. Whereas here in South Africa and many places in Asia, the work ethic is very different to many young people in North America. So like you can actually use it to your advantage if you're willing to work hard. It's like, oh no, I'm a really hard worker. I'm always going to show up on time. I'm going to get stuff done. I think that's an advantage you might have over some people that are like starting up in the UK or the US. There's quite a few of them that will just show up late to an interview and they think it's okay. And it's like, no, it's not okay. Like business owners really, I think that's why a lot of business owners like actually working with people from the Philippines, is because of the reliability. It's like, yeah, maybe they don't fully understand everything that we need because they have a lack of experience, but damn, are they reliable, and damn, are they going to be consistent with the work that they produce, or whatever it is. I want to ask you something about time zone, because I worked in Asian time zone for months, and it was interesting. Like I often found myself up at 12 at night, midnight, waiting for my American client to like get back to me in something before, because then I needed to finish it. And that was difficult. Like when I had 4 email clients, it was like the one guy was in Pacific time.
And it's that's like 15 hours.
It's really bad. It's like 1 a.m. He's just waking up. Thank goodness he's a morning person, because otherwise he'd be up until 3. Yeah. How do you do that? And like you have like family as well. You got 2 kids, right? So like how do you?
Yeah, I do.
How do you live in I couldn't do it permanently like that. It was hard. It was really difficult. It's like, how do you have a family and operate in Eastern American time zone without them feeling like you're like the least reliable person on their team?
I would tell you, it's really not easy. It really is not easy. But one thing that's helped is that one, you have to understand sleep cycles first. So if you go into the whole biohacking space and everything and all, right, I'm not going to dive into it because I'm not going to pretend I know a lot about it. But when it comes to sleep cycles, apparently you don't actually need to sleep like 8 hours continuously. Mm-hmm. You just need to have like 4 complete or 5 complete sleep cycles. And every person's sleep cycle it varies, but on average it's about 90 minutes. So at one point, because I actually worked with an American client, I worked with a couple of American clients, but one of the biggest American clients I worked with was close to about a year plus. And we used to have like 12 a.m. meetings, but he was in Eastern, so it wasn't too bad. That's 12 hours behind from me. So we used to have 12 a.m. meetings, and then once a week we would have a 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. meeting, I can't recall. So if I have a 2 a.m. meeting, I will try to catch at least 1 sleep cycle before the 2 a.m. So at least 1 90-minute, if I can afford it, before the 2 a.m. And 1 90-minute, I make sure I set an alarm. If I wake up at 90 minutes, because for me personally, my sleep cycle is in 90-minute cycles. If I wake up at 90 minutes, I actually feel fine at 2 a.m. Yeah, so then I'll get on the call at 2 a.m., but I make sure I dim the lights so like it wouldn't be as bright as this. I make sure the lights are dim. I make sure my computer, your computer has a setting where you can do like, night light and stuff like that. So like keep all the lights as low as possible, right? I go through the meeting. I'm still able to contribute because I was there for still a whole year, right? And we managed to achieve like pretty good results. Still managed to contribute. And then I'm done by 3 a.m. You have to be super disciplined. Once you're done, no phones, no more devices. You really have to just go back into your room and sleep. So then from 3 a.m. to about 8 a.m., that's about 5 hours. So you get about another 3 cycles or 4 cycles. Then I'll wake up. I'll send my kid to school. Then I get back home. In the morning, I'll work out. I get like at least 4 hours of solid work. And then by 1, 2 p.m., I'm like super tired. And then I'll take a nap with my kid. So that's how I spend time with my kid as well, right? And it works out quite well, right? Then I wake up. Then I have like maybe another 2 hours of work in the evening. Then I take a break. Dinner time, put the kid to bed. And then by 10 o'clock, when everybody's asleep, then I'm just up working again, you see. So so it kind of works, right? It's not ideal, and I'm pretty glad that I have a more time zone friendly client right now. But other than that, like then we leverage things like Loom. You just have to make sure that communication is super tight. You really have to plan ahead. You cannot be very reactive. There are advantages as well. So like, and I've worked with amazing clients, amazing clients, where they just go like, okay, we understand that you are like 12 hours ahead of us. So they will just like prepare all the stuff like, like we need this done by tomorrow. So then I'll just do I'll do everything. And by the time they are up, they can review. And then I, edit, make changes or whatever I need to do. And then we just keep on working on this cycle, you see. So yeah, it's not easy, but there's this thing called the trucker's sleep cycle. You can Google it. That's where I learned about this whole sleep cycle thing, because truckers don't get a lot of continuous sleep as well. So yeah, so that's how I manage it. And I did this when I was like 33, 34. So if you're a lot younger, in your 20s, I'm sure you can take this a lot more, because I can tell you when I was in corporate, it wasn't any better as well. Even though I don't have 2 a.m. meetings, but I still work like 14, 15-hour days. It wasn't, it was horrible as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and the other cool thing, one thing I really did enjoy about Asia is like, I have a lot of the day to myself. That's nice. So like when you wake up, maybe there's a couple people still awake in America time, and they're like working, and it's like, okay, until like 10 a.m. maybe there's a little bit of stuff to do still. But then, like that's it. I remember because I was in Japan, and I think Japan's 1 hour ahead of Malaysia, maybe even 2 hours ahead of Malaysia. But like Japan is like 14 hours ahead of Eastern time, I think, something. So it's like, or 13 hours ahead. Anyway,
yeah.
It's just
Japan
like,
is 1 hour ahead. Yeah. Yeah, so it's 13 hours, yeah.
13. So I'm always able to just have a great day. Like I would be able to go out and like have a cool lunch somewhere, go explore something, do something cool. Like my free time was the middle of the day, which is actually really nice time to have free time. Like if you're working in the same time zone, then your free time is often just in the evening. And it's like, I don't always want to do evening activities. So anyway, it's a great opportunity, but I'm glad to hear that you've done that. And I would love to dig into so many more things with you. I think we'll just have to have another chat and learn all those secrets next time. If people want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
Facebook. I'm super active on Facebook. So yeah, just hit me on Facebook, and definitely can keep in touch there.
Yeah, well, that's great. I'll make sure to put it in the description. And
awesome.
Mark, I really appreciate your time today. I hope that everybody really enjoyed this, and I'll chat with you very soon. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, man.